We'll call to order this meeting of the Santa Barbara County Air Pollution Control District. Today is October 17th, 2019. Would you call the roll, please?
Director Williams?
Here.
Hart? Hartman? Adam? Lavanino? Sierra? Clark? Perotti? Rubalcaba? Mosby? Patino? Toussaint? And Chair Murillo.
Here. Thank you. We'll do our Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Mary Julian is here.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve our minutes from the meeting of August 15th? I know we all reviewed them carefully.
I'll make that motion. Let me go on a limb.
Thank you. And a second from Director Adam. We'll take a roll call vote on the approval of the minutes, please.
Director Williams?
Aye.
Hartman?
Aye.
Adam?
Aye.
Lavanino?
Aye.
Julian?
Aye.
Mosby?
Aye.
And Chair Murillo.
Aye. We'll move on to administrative items. Would anyone like to discuss an item, or do I have a motion to move them all forward, please?
Yeah, me too.
So D1, if the clerk would read that item.
Item D1 is to receive and file the summary of notices of violation issued and penalty revenue received during the months of August and September 2019.
Director Adam, your question or comments?
Well, I just wanted to know what the heck's up with these number of violations, especially the ones that were all failed to submit 2018 annual reports. What's up with that?
This year, with the annual reports, they're due, I believe, in March of each year. And traditionally, we have not had a process in place where we evaluated all the reports that were due and issued violations simultaneously. It's been something we've conducted during an inspection. But with the assistance of an intern, we were able to evaluate all the annual reports that were due right after the due date and then follow up with the companies that had yet to submit them. The numbers reflect what we historically have in our reports to your board, but typically those come in throughout the year. This is just we caught all of the companies that didn't submit them on time simultaneously.
Well, is there something, is this normal? Is this a normal number, or
Yeah,
is this,
it's a normal number. Typically, you would just see it throughout the year.
you just see it dribble in a little bit at a time?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I was thinking maybe something got harder about doing it or something, but
No, nothing
Yeah.
changed on the
Okay.
requirement for the annual
All
report.
right.
Just the way we followed up with
All
the
right.
dates.
all right, thank you.
Do you need to vote on that separately? Then would you make a motion to move the administrative items forward, please?
So moved.
And a second from Director Hart. Any other discussion? We'll take a roll call vote, please.
Director Williams?
Aye.
Hart?
Aye.
Hartman?
Aye.
Adam?
Aye.
Lavanino? Julian? Mosby? And Chair Murillo.
Aye. Very good. That passes. And we'll move on to public comment. Do you have slips, Ms. Clerk?
I have no speaker slips.
Is anyone out there that needs to address us? Anyone in Santa Barbara? You all down there? Okay. Okay, we'll close public comment and we'll go to item F, our director's report.
All right, good afternoon. I have a few items I'd like to share with you. First off, I'd like to welcome new staff to the Air District. On September 3rd, Lucas Carnero was able to join our administrative division as an accounting technician. Lucas grew up in New York, and then he moved to Santa Barbara to go to UC Santa Barbara, where he earned a degree in environmental studies and a concentration in journalism. In February of this year, we were fortunate to have Lucas join us as an intern to assist us in compliance and outreach items, and we're very happy he was able to secure a permanent position within our administrative division. On his time off work, he enjoys rock climbing and practicing landscape photography, and being part of the administrative division, it allows Lucas the opportunity to use some of his design work in assisting our outreach efforts on our social media. So if you follow us on Instagram or Twitter, you too can see some of his fine work in visual display and some of his photos as well. So please welcome me and welcoming Lucas to join our team. Next, I would like to bring to your attention a few legislative items. With the session concluding recently, we have a number of bills that I've brought to your attention, some passed and some that have been moved into two-year bills. The first one is AB 836. This is a WIC's bill. It's to build wildfire smoke clean air centers throughout the state. This bill originated in the Bay Area, probably from all the impacts of the Camp Fire last year, and the need to provide clean air ventilation at community spaces like libraries or schools. It passed, and it will create incentive programs to create a network of these clean air spaces statewide. The funds will be subject to appropriation, so it's not quite sure how much money each year is going to be allocated to forming these clean air centers. But when we go through that process, I'll be working with CAPCOA and the other air districts to ensure we secure some of those funds here in our county, and we can work then to determine where we can establish a clean air center or more than one center. Next up is SB 69, Wiener's bill. It's Ocean Resiliency Act. And I've talked about this bill in the past. There was a component of it, in addition to overall ocean health, there was a portion associated with the establishment of a vessel speed reduction program. And this bill was moving successfully through the legislature. However, it did not successfully pass. There were a lot of aspects associated to it, and there was no funding source either. So it now has become a two-year bill. So we'll be working with our partners that we have over the years on our vessel speed reduction program and the author to see how it continues into the next year. Since we don't have a funding source for vessel speed reduction going into 2020, we're now working with Ventura County Air Pollution Control District in the Bay Area, AQMD, to see if we can get CARB to establish funds through the supplemental environmental program that they have to earmark some money so we can continue the program into 2020. We'll keep you posted on the negotiations with CARB. We have AB 1714, Aguiar Curry, and this was a gut and amend attempt by the Wine Institute trying to reduce the Air District's authority on evaluating and addressing wine fermentation emissions. This is the second year that the Wine Institute has made an attempt, and it was an 11th hour gut and amend attempt trying to undermine Air District authority. We had strong opposition in this bill from CAPCOA and the large air districts, as well as some other environmental organizations which were concerned about conflicts to the Federal Clean Air Act. So with the strong opposition, we were able to convince the author to stop the bill, but put it on a two-year calendar. In the meantime, on the 31st of this month, the Senate and Assembly Select Committee on Wine will be holding a joint hearing related to the issues to better understand the air quality impacts associated with wine fermentation and what's being done across the state. I will be participating in that committee hearing to share our experience from Santa Barbara County.
Ms. Arlenschnee, what was the bill number on that one?
That was 1714.
Thank you.
That is a two-year bill, so we'll see how, and if they decide to push forward that bill or try another gut and amend. They seem to like the gut and amend strategy. Then the last bill was that I wanted to bring to your attention, AB 661 McCarty. This was designed specifically with Metro AQMD. They had a very difficult time during the campfires and the impacts to Sacramento region on communicating and responding to the wildfire smoke impacts. So this bill is requiring that air district to prepare a wildfire smoke air pollution emergency plan that will help develop an informational strategy to coordinate not only with the air districts but the multiple public health officers throughout the region. It is specifically targeted with that air district. However, it also has CARB working with all air districts up and down the state to get a list of best practices that have been used. So by 2022, CARB working with CAPCOA will provide a report back to the legislature. One thing that relates here specifically to our area and what the intent of this bill is, in our current budget, we had a line item in our budget to develop an air quality emergency plan. We're actually in the process of doing that right now with the intent of having that wrapped up by the end of this fiscal year. We have a lot of experience with the Thomas Fire and a lot of best practices that we intend to incorporate into our air quality emergency response plan. So this will be beneficial not only for our air district, but also to share with the other districts throughout California. In our air pollution emergency plan, we're also incorporating a continuity of operations plan. That's something with all the PSPSs that have been occurring and trying to determine what and how we will maintain our core responsibilities has really been elevated up our priority list recently. And speaking of PSPS, we've been working closely with the Office of Emergency Management to coordinate efforts associated with any PSPS affecting our area. We've been on daily calls. We've been providing information to residents and businesses with our social media, our connections through Nextdoor, and also Office of Emergency Management's town hall meetings. We've gotten great response on the postcards that we had available, that I made available or I shared with you at our last meeting. And I just wanted to let you know, if you would like any of these for your office, whether it's for residents or businesses, we have them available for you. So let us know if that would be beneficial. One last safety item. We successfully participated in the Great Shakeout today, 10/17. October 17, we did both in our Santa Barbara office and our Santa Maria office. So that's always a good exercise to keep in mind how to be prepared. And the last item on my APCO report is our 2019 ozone plan. This is our triennial update. Next Wednesday, we're going to bring the final plan to our Community Advisory Council for their consideration. And we anticipate, based on their recommendations, bringing this to your board at the December meeting. And that concludes my report.
Do you have a question, Director Levanino?
Thank you. I just had a question about the timing of the, when do you plan on going up to Sacramento and talking about the wine fermentation?
That is on October 31st.
Okay, great. Thanks. Are you going with anybody else from the county, or is it just you?
It's one of my staff will be going with me. Other members of CAPCO will also be there. CAPCO has been asked to present on the panel.
So are you speaking before a Senate committee, or?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Do you know other counties like Napa, are they joining, or?
No.
No, this is just,
It's going to be wine industry and the air district and the third person on the panel. There's a third,
that's
do
okay.
you remember, Mike?
I'm sorry.
Can't recall.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And what do you?
Oh
Okay.
yeah, UC Davis from a study point of view.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions related to the director's report? You're going up there on Halloween. Okay, that's crazy.
I'm going to dress in a witch's costume.
Oh, gosh. Okay. We'll close that item on that note and move on to item G, the good part of our meeting.
Item G1 is to receive a presentation from district staff on the district's portable air monitoring and compliance instrumentation.
All right, so we are very excited about this item. Thank you all for being here and talking with staff. I think this is probably the first time we've been able to bring all of our tools before you and share how we go about assessing air quality throughout our region with our portable instrumentation. And this is an effort both of our compliance division and our planning division. It's definitely a teamwork here. We're going to start off the presentation. Sage Swain is going to walk us through the instruments from our compliance division that we use in inspections as well as in complaint response. And then Jake Canny is going to present on the monitoring section side, the portable air monitoring device that we use to fill in the holes where our stationary ambient monitoring stations are not located. You've heard over the years the excitement, it seems like over the years, it's probably been 1 year now, to get our air pointer. We agonized on how we were going to get that air pointer here, through the doors, into the room, tow it up. So instead of doing that, we actually produced our video. The first video that I've been involved in for a long time here, so we're excited about that. In addition to Sage with compliance, we have the manager, Caitlin McNally, who's here. And then on the monitoring side, we have all of our monitoring staff. First off, Molly, who is the manager of the division, and then the principal air quality specialist, Joel Cordes. You also have air quality specialist David Brogy, Howard Hammerman. So really appreciate having all of our staff here to show and tell. And Sage and Jake, if you can come on up and walk us through everything.
Okay, good.
Are we using this one?
Yeah.
Sibilance. Okay. So I'm Sage Swain. I'm air quality specialist for the compliance division, formerly known as an inspector. I brought the instruments that we use to either directly ascertain compliance or to help us prove our case for compliance or non-compliance. And I'll let Jake introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Jake Canny. I'm an air quality specialist.
You have to get nice and close to the microphone, sir. Yeah, thanks.
Sorry. I'm Jake Canny. I'm an air quality specialist in the monitoring section, and I'll be talking to you today about the EBAM, which is behind me now, and the air pointer we'll have a video of.
Thank you.
All right. So I'll kick it off here. Our first instrument, Joel, if you will.
So video first?
No, I have a PowerPoint as
Oh,
well.
PowerPoint, okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
Okay. All right. You guys ready to geek out on some instruments here? So, next slide, please, Joel. So we just went over, I'm going to go over the compliance instruments. We're going to be talking about the toxic vapor analyzer, the Testo 350 XL combustion and emissions analyzer, the Microphaser AS handheld asbestos analyzer, the Jerome J605 hydrogen sulfide analyzer, and the MIE PDR 1500 personal aerosol monitor. And as Jake mentioned, he's going to be going over the EBAM and the air pointer video. Next slide, please. So the first one is our toxic vapor analyzer, which is this guy right here. It measures total hydrocarbons in parts per million, and it does it with a flame ionization detector or a photoionization detector, or both. This unit has both. And the flame ionization detector uses a flame, it draws in a sample, it combusts the hydrocarbons, and due to the amount of combustion within the unit, it pops out ppm in the range of 0 to 50,000 ppm. Photoionization detector similarly sucks in air, but this one uses a lamp, and it goes through the unit and comes out the other side. And the difference between the two is the PID is very sensitive to aromatic and chlorinated compounds and can detect things that the FID cannot. It just has a smaller dynamic range of 0 to 2,000 parts per million. And if anyone has questions, just feel free to either raise your hand or blurt them out while I go through.
We have a question then.
Yeah.
Can you just, when you're running through each piece, can you tell us how much they cost
Yeah. So,
and what the life is? And
this first one is about $18,000 brand new, the way we have it configured.
Yeah.
Because it's both the PID and the FID, and we have GPS coordination available.
Okay, and what's the life on that? Useful life?
It depends on who's using it.
How many times you drop it? Is that what the
Pretty
deal
much,
is?
yeah. And how much water gets sucked into it and that sort of thing. So,
Okay.
we have the older version still, and some of those are like 15, 20 years old. They're just
Okay.
phasing them out.
Okay.
And we can't get parts for them, so we're starting to bring in the new model.
Yeah, and my question, if you could just incorporate it for as you talk
Yeah.
about each thing, is
Definitely.
kind of what's the useful life and
Okay.
what's the replacement?
Yeah, it's usually if you use them well and you keep them calibrated, you can use them forever, essentially.
Okay, all right, I like hearing that.
We have another question.
Yes.
What is your fuel source on your flame ionization detector?
Hydrogen.
Okay. Makes sense.
We fill up this little guy with hydrogen every inspection or so. It contains about 2,000 psi and will last around 8 hours to 10 hours.
I was wondering, yeah, you really couldn't use butane when you
No.
check hydrocarbons. It was like,
And these have to,
how's it making it work, right?
and they have to be intrinsically safe for the type of environments we go into with
Yeah.
these things, which I'll get into next. So my main use, I'm our principal onshore and offshore oil and gas inspector, and this is our bread and butter right here. We go out and catch fugitive hydrocarbon emissions, i.e. gas leaks, and depending on where we find them, Rule 331 comes into play, Rule 325 and Rule 326, as well as CARB's greenhouse gas regulation for oil and gas facilities. So if I find a component like a valve leaking or a union or something like that that's in gas service, Rule 331 applies. If I find a tank seam or a piece of piping leaking, Rule 325 applies, and same with Rule 326. Their only difference is custody transfer. Rule 325 is pre-custody transfer, and Rule 326 is post-custody transfer. We also use them for our municipal solid waste facility inspections, and we implement CARB's landfill regulation. So what we do is attach a long probe onto the end of this and walk a grid along the landfill surface and look for methane leaks. And then depending on what we find, that's what we enforce as a CARB landfill regulation. And then we also use them at contaminated soil cleanups, and that's where the PID really comes in, because it can pick up other things other than hydrocarbons that we might not be able to read with the FID.
Anything else, Mr. Mosby?
I had a question.
Yeah.
So when you're out like at an oil facility, and you're walking, do you actually walk the pipeline, or do you have a set grid you're supposed to walk, or how often?
You can do it many different ways. The smaller facilities will check everything. Bigger facilities, I'll walk around with my source and be like, do you want me to check the one on the left or the one on the right, a random inspection pattern. They used to draw cards, and you would pick every fifth component. Whatever you drew, if you drew a 5, you would check every fifth component. So that sort of thing. But technology has gotten so much better, we can check things a lot quicker. Yeah, it's supposed to be random, so we're not cherry picking, things. Any other questions on the TVA 2020?
Go ahead.
Oh, so anyway, that's a gas plant right there. So we would be inspecting all of that piping, all of those components that we can reach, essentially. And you physically put that in a backpack and walk along with the probe and run it along the surface and check every nook and cranny that you can, or the random inspection pattern. Next, Joel. Next is the Testo 350 XL combustion emissions analyzer, which is this guy right there. We use that in boiler inspections and in engine inspections. So anything that combusts fuel, we can check for nitrous oxides, carbon monoxide, and that's pretty much all we check for, because that's what our rules dictate. So, next slide.
And do you have an estimate on the cost?
Yes, that is between $10,000 and $15,000, depending on how you have it configured. So it has electrochemical sensors inside of the housing of it, and you can switch out what kind of sensors for what you're measuring. But for us, we just do nitrous oxides, carbon monoxide, and the two nitrogen monoxide and dioxide and oxygen. And the combination of the monoxide and dioxide is the total NOx readings. And then you can set, which our rules require, the percent oxygen, and that'll give you the corrected value to whatever percent oxygen that is. And all results are given in parts per million. Go ahead, Joel. We use it for boiler and steam generator and process and water heater inspections, as well as internal combustion engine inspections. The different rules are just designed for the size of the burner, so the amount of heat input. So like Rule 342 is for the big pieces of equipment that heat water, anywhere from 5 million BTU per hour and greater. The Rule 360 is for smaller combustion sources. We usually don't use them that much for that, just that we use the same as South Coast. So if South Coast says it's available for use, we check that and it's good. The main thing we do use them for is Rule 361, because they are actually having to provide tune-ups to their equipment, usually twice a year, in order to make sure that they're falling beneath the rule limits and their permitted limits. So what we do is we fire that thing up, stick the probe in the exhaust, let it run for 15 minutes, and we check the NOx levels and the CO levels to make sure that they're within permitted limits. If they're not, they get 14 days to come into compliance with their limits. So it's not a hard, fast rule breaker, or I guess rule analyzer. It just triggers a repair, I guess you could call it. Any other questions on that? And then Rule 333 is the same thing. The only difference is we set it to a different percentage of oxygen. 3% for boilers and 15% for engines. No questions? All
I
right.
don't see any lights. Okay,
Okay.
thanks.
Next is the Microphaser AS Asbestos Analyzer, which looks like the ray gun there. That's right around $30,000. It uses near-infrared spectroscopy to rapidly identify the 6 types of asbestos fibers. It just reports the type of asbestos fiber it finds. I don't know how to pronounce all those, so I won't. But those are the 6 fibers it looks for. Go ahead, Joel. And we use this on asbestos-related inspections and complaints to enforce the asbestos National Emission Standards for Hazardous Air Pollution, which is the asbestos NESHAP. So what we do, this isn't another hard, fast compliance tool either. It's more of a pre-screening. So we'll take that out with us. We'll see something that we think might have asbestos in it, shoot the little laser into it. If it comes back with asbestos, then we'll take a sample and then send it to a lab to determine final compliance. But on the converse side, it's really good for complaints. So if we kind of know that doesn't look like it has asbestos, it was built in 2015, but their neighbor's worried that they might be breathing in some kind of dust while they're doing construction, they might have asbestos. We go out, get a negative reading, and it really kind of mellows out the complainant. Give them a call back, say, hey, we took this out there and we didn't find anything. And that, yeah, I said 30,000. Any other questions? Nope. Nope. Next, we have our Jerome J605 hydrogen sulfide analyzer. This thing sucks in air from the front. If there's H2S on it, it adheres to a gold film inside of there, which creates an electrical current. And that electrical current is directly proportional to the mass of the H2S that's stuck on there. And that comes out as a reading in parts per billion or parts per million. It's very sensitive. The range is from 3 parts per billion to 10 parts per million. And readings of 100 parts per billion or less are displayed in units of parts per billion. And readings above 100 parts per billion are displayed in units of parts per million. Say that 5 times fast. This thing, go ahead, Joel. We mainly use it to enforce our Rule 310 odorous organic sulfides rule. Rule 310 prohibits the discharge of H2S or OOSs beyond the property line in excess of 0.06 parts per million for an average of 3 minutes, or 0.03 parts per million for an average of an hour. So we can use this at facilities and walk the perimeter that we know have high H2S concentrations to make sure they're falling under the rule of 310. And it's really good for complaints that we get, as in the Galita complaints that we've had historically. And then, go ahead, Joel. The last one's the MIE. Oh, the Jerome is about $11,000. Yep, one in North County and one in South County. And this is our PDR 1500 aerosol monitor. It uses a photometric light scattering configuration to measure airborne particles, including dust, smoke, fumes, and mist. And we use it mostly for dust. It measures particles inside from 0.1 to 10 micrograms and has a range of 0.001 to 400 micrograms per cubic meter. The results are displayed and recorded in real time. It gives you the result of exactly what you're reading at that moment, and then gives you a time-rated average for however long you've been sampling. Go ahead, Joel. And we use this to help us in our contaminated soil cleanup inspections, dust complaints, and in Rule 345, control of fugitive dust from construction and demo activities. For CSCs, we walk perimeters. The district permits usually require an action be started if so much dust or is being created from the contaminated soil cleanup, and so they're supposed to stop activity, apply dust suppressant, and then once they reach below the permitted levels, they can resume activities. Again, for dust complaints, it's not a hard, fast compliance tool. It just helps to give more weight to the inspector's findings. So if it's a super dusty day, you can take that out with you, turn it on, and walk around with it, and be like, hey, I saw dust leaving here. It was super dusty, and that'll just give you scientific proof that what you saw was actually happening. And then same with Rule 345. So Rule 345, the hard, fast rule, is 20% opacity of dust leaving a construction site, and that's a visual thing for an inspector to actually perform, but this will just give them more credence if they do write a violation. Any questions? Nope.
No, thank you. Yeah. The cost on this one, or did you already say?
Yeah, it's about $11,000.
Okay. Any questions? Oh, go ahead, Mr. Mosby.
You know, when you see dust blown somewhere, it's not uniform.
Correct.
I mean, you see it's a mix and stuff. So, I mean, is this machine going crazy from high to low, or is it averaging? What's it?
It does both. So say a truck runs by, right, kicks up a bunch of dust, you'll get a high elevated reading, but then it gives you that time weighted average as well. So for however long you're sampling for. So if you're walking around for like 5 minutes, it's really low, but then you remembered, hey, a truck came by and kicked up a bunch of dust and then it spiked, you know that's what it kind of came from.
And how is it receiving the air?
So it's an active sampler. So the air is drawn in through this point here, and it actually has a HEPA filter on the end. And so what it does is gets sucked in through here if it fits. So that's where the cut point is. Anything smaller than that will get in, anything bigger won't. And then it comes in, goes through the chamber of light, and then gets stuck on a filter here, which is really nice too, because you can prove whose dust it is if you have the sample here, and then you can go take a sample of dust from the source and compare the two in a lab.
It just seems you're sampling such a small amount of total volume to get something in, you know, parts per billion or parts per million component.
Yeah, it's in micrograms per
almost-
meter. It's tiny, yeah.
Yeah, it's almost not, you know, miserable in your brain capacity of how small you're taking how much small it is. It's-
And you can buy separate cyclones, so you can choose exactly what size of dust or particulate comes into these things. We just want total dust.
And you're getting a lot more of a pinpoint component, whereas if you had a larger sample of the total volume, it seems like it'd be, if your cone was bigger.
Yeah, it would be sucking
Yeah.
more things, but these things are actually pretty accurate. And again, it's not used for a hard, fast compliance determination. It's just there to back
Just
up
to
our
verify.
findings. Yeah, we would go out there and be like, oh my gosh, my eyes were burning. I tasted dust. You know, it took pictures of it, and then this just backs it up. Anything else?
I have a question regarding, we have a contaminated fuel site in Guadalupe, 900 Main, Guadalupe Street.
Microphone, yeah.
I'm sorry. Harrison Jr. from Guadalupe, and we have that contaminated site. What's the relationship between what you're doing and the monitoring? We hear this, you know, the units continually going. I look, the units that draw the contaminated fuel out.
So these are mostly, is it a dig and haul
It's a
operation?
dig and haul, yeah.
Okay. So yeah, usually there is a designated person on site that has to go every half hour and perform sampling, not only of.
Which doesn't happen, so.
Oh, it doesn't?
No, not, so I was wondering what the connection is with you all and the crew that's doing the remediation.
Okay, so we'll go out for an initial operation inspection and go over all the record keeping, all the parameters that they need to be performing for that specific contaminated soil cleanup. And then we'll take our pieces of equipment and walk around with them and compare our results with their results, just to make sure that their equipment is jiving with our equipment. And then the main thing behind contaminated soil cleanups is the reduction of complaints. And so that's what all of our permits are pretty much designed around, is to not receive complaints from the contaminated soil cleanup itself. So that's what the permit is written. And if depending on the permit, if we get one complaint, it's an automatic violation. And these are just measures to try and help them not receive complaints for their activities.
Well, either somebody's doing a good job in making sure there's no leaks, or nobody knows how to complain, because right next to it is a apartment complex, maybe 100 yards from it. And I hadn't seen anything, but I know that we're looking at that site remediation, and there hasn't been any reports back, at least from our knowledge on the council side, any
Okay.
information regarding that.
You could give us a call. We can go
could
check
look
it out.
into that
Okay.
as well. And I also, when I worked in San Luis Obispo County Air District, I know there was the Guadalupe cleanup with Chevron. And
Right.
Is that the same cleanup? that
No,
you're-
this is on an old a gasoline station.
Okay.
Okay.
On the
We could
corner.
look further into that and get back to you.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Before I ask Santa Barbara if they have any questions, can you repeat your name?
Sage Swain?
Swain?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Swain, thank you so much. You're welcome. Director Hartman, I see you there. You're not benefiting like we are from having the instruments right in the room with us. Are you getting a good view?
Yes, and it's a fascinating presentation. Thank you.
Okay, very
Well,
good.
thank you.
Thanks.
I like to be fascinated. And I'll kick it over to Jacob now.
Thank you, Mr. Swain.
Hi, so I'm Jake Canny, an air quality specialist in the monitoring section, and I'm here to talk to you about two of the tools that we use in monitoring. The main difference between the compliance tools and the monitoring tools is that after I set them up, I get to walk away. So the first one that we're here to talk about today is the EBAM, which is located behind me. Are we able to get that slide going?
Oh, there's a slide, okay.
So, this is an overview of the Environmental Beta Attenuation Monitor, or the EBAM. It's a portable monitor for measuring particulate matter, and it has a range from 0 to 1,000 micrograms per cubic meter, and it has a lower detectable limit of just 1 microgram per cubic meter. It can be configured to measure both particulate matter less than 10 microns, as well as particulate matter less than 2.5 microns, depending on configuration, and I'll touch a little bit more on that on the next slide. Readings are available as an hour average or in real time, and once again, when I get more into the operation of how this thing works, I'll touch on that. And the data is also backed up internally in case we lose communication with it. So if we were to lose communication, it's backed up internally, and then when we restore communication, we can backpull all of that data so we don't actually lose anything. Additional sensors can be utilized, such as wind speed and direction and ambient temperature, just to give us a little more information about the location where it's deployed. And this is the primary tool that we use for measuring smoke impacts from wildfires or prescribed burns. The EBAM does not have a federal equivalent method, or FEM designation, and what that means is the data from this device is not suitable for determining attainment of air quality standards, but it is still suitable as a survey tool. And when we're deploying the EBAM, there are a couple things that we like to consider. We need a reliable source of power. It has to be plugged in. We also want it to be relatively close to sensitive receptors, such as schools or elderly people, so generally we aim for schools. And we don't want it to be right next to a permanent monitoring station, because that defeats the purpose. And it also provides an opportunity to interface with the public, which is another reason why I like to look for a school where I can deploy it. The picture on the slide there is from Joe Nightingale Elementary School, actually. And we deployed that smoke monitor there for the Santa Maria Airport burn. And while I was deploying it, a third grade class took quite a bit of interest, and I was lucky enough to give them a presentation afterwards. So that's another added benefit to our EBAM smoke monitor. And on the next slide, I'll get into the operation of it. The district does own this particular EBAM, but we do have more that are available for loan for neighboring air districts from the California Air Resources Board. We're going to be hosting an EBAM cache, so if Ventura County or SLO County needed some, then we'll be hosting and maintaining those as well. And from there, we can go ahead and get on to how this thing works. On the next slide, I have two diagrams up there that will help, but are not quite enough. So the ambient air is drawn through a pump located in the box there, down through the sample head, and then through a filter tape, which I have right here. Normal readings deposited on the filter tape, you would not be able to see from this distance. It would just look like the tape. These were from the Sherpa fire in 2016. So every spot here corresponds to 1 hour, and this is what we're breathing. So that's the tape that it's deposited on. And then once it's deposited on the tape, there's a beta radiation source and detector in there that can determine how much mass of this is there. So how that works is there's the radiation source and then the detector beneath it. And for whatever radiation doesn't make it to the detector, it was picked up by the mass on the tape. And then from there are pressure and flow sensors that can tell us how much air we actually sampled during that time. So using the radiation, we can determine the mass of the sample, and then based on how much air is there, we can then calculate in micrograms per cubic meter, similar to the PDR tool. And depending on the configuration, as I said earlier, with PM10 versus PM2.5, the sample head at the top has dimensions inside so that the air spins around in such a way that any particles larger than 10 microns are too heavy to stay in the airflow, and they'll crash against the side and they'll get stuck there. And then when we're using this for wildfire smoke, we're primarily interested in PM2.5, and so we'll use this cutter beneath it as well. And that has a tighter cyclone in there, so anything larger than 2.5 microns in that case will crash out against the wall and be stuck and won't make it through to the tape. And then from there, once we have the readings, we've determined the mass that's on the tape and we've determined the total volume of air that we've sampled, we can get those readings in real time to our data acquisition system, or DAS, for the staff to review and then upload to the website. Before I move on, are there any questions on the EBAM?
No, thank you. Oh, Mr. Adam.
Yeah.
Yes.
The question is, what do we use for compliance purposes? If this isn't suitable for compliance purposes, what instrument do we use?
Well, this isn't suitable for determining attainment of our air quality standards for the state or the federal government. So in our actual permanent monitoring stations, we have a slightly more robust version of this exact unit, actually, that does carry an FEM designation. But because this one is portable, it doesn't carry that same designation.
All right.
But
Gotcha.
did I answer your question?
Yeah, no, I get it. I mean, I suppose we could talk about what the difference is, what the technical difference is that makes one more robust than the other.
Right. So some of the time it's flow rate. Depending on the flow rate that's sampled, let's see, how can I best describe this? It has to do with the accuracy of the instrument under a variety of conditions. So because this one isn't able to be temperature controlled and it's portable, it doesn't perform as reliably under all of the different conditions that it may be subjected to, where the monitors that we have in a temperature controlled monitoring station, regardless of what's going on outside, the instrument inside that shelter isn't affected by it.
Okay, and so the permanent ones are inside a shelter?
Yes, the shelter is temperature controlled.
Oh,
So-
gotcha, okay.
Yes.
So there's no reason other than cost. I mean, you're just able to deploy these easier because they cost half as much, or
They're easy to set up, they're reasonably
Yeah.
priced, and they provide a lot of essential information.
Can you-
It's real on
can
the
you-
public awareness and putting this information up onto our website. We find them extremely useful during wildfires where we don't have a spot on our permanent monitoring network and folks are being impacted. Carpinteria comes to mind with the Thomas fire. We didn't have a permanent station down in Carpinteria. We were able to deploy our EBAM and see the impacts and measure the impacts, and that gives some assurance to the general public. For wildfires or for prescribed burns, when we deploy these in prescribed burn locations, we're able to see if everything is meeting prescription and the conditions are such that it's not impacting the downwind community.
what's the the sacrifice in accuracy, or does it vary depending upon the conditions?
It would vary depending on the conditions. So the way that the measurements are being made are sensitive to the ambient conditions around it. And so if, we're at perfect 75 degrees Fahrenheit, for example, this would be more accurate than if it was really cold or really hot.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, I meant to give you, before I started on this, these run from around $12,000 to $15,000, and it's easy to get a decade or so out of them in terms of performance.
Okay. And so what's the cost on one of the permanent ones?
Well, the cost for the permanent monitor is actually mostly tied into the station. So getting a permanent location for the monitoring station with a concrete slab and a shelter, that could easily get you into six figures before you've even put any equipment in it.
Okay.
And then the more robust version of this that we would be putting in one of those stations is $25,000 or more.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions on the EBAM?
You're Mr. Henning?
Mr. Canny.
Oh, God, I
I'm
didn't
sorry.
hear you. Okay, no, it's me. Thank you. Well, thanks.
Alrighty, and then next I would like to touch on a couple points on the air pointer, and then we'll go ahead and play a video. So the air pointer is a portable temperature controlled enclosure that houses a lot of other air monitoring equipment, and it's capable of measuring PM10, PM2.5 at the same time, and hydrogen sulfide. Unlike the EBAM, the PM monitor does carry an FEM designation for PM2.5, but not for PM10. The custom rack and trailer allow it to be largely mobile, so we'll be able to deploy it anywhere in the county with power, and it also has an internal data logger. But before I go too far on that, let's go ahead and roll the video.
Hi, I'm Liz Hoffman, Public Information Officer for the Santa Barbara County Air Pollution Control District.
Hi, I'm Jake Canny. I'm an air quality specialist in the monitoring section.
At the Air Pollution Control District where we work, we regulate stationary sources of air pollution in Santa Barbara County. We also have a robust network of monitoring stations throughout the county. These stations measure for ozone, or what we think of as smog, and also for the very small particles known as particulate matter. However, there are times when air quality issues like smoke from wildfires or hydrogen sulfide odors don't occur in close proximity to those monitoring stations.
For those times, we have several portable tools that we can use to measure pollution in a specific location. One of those tools is the air pointer, which we're standing in front of today.
So this is it. What can you tell me about it?
So the air pointer is a temperature-controlled enclosure that houses a lot of other monitoring equipment. It is large, but it's designed to be mobile. So it comes on a custom rack that has wheels, as well as a trailer with a winch, so that we can deploy this anywhere in the county that's safe, secure, and has reliable power. It also helps us to bring it back to the monitoring lab for calibrations and maintenance.
Can we get a look at the inner workings?
Yeah. So starting from the top, we have meteorological sensors for wind speed and direction, as well as ambient temperature. And then there are two sample intakes, one for the particulate matter monitor and one for the hydrogen sulfide monitor. And then starting up here, this is the particulate matter monitor, which is capable of measuring both PM10 and PM2.5. And then this is the hydrogen sulfide monitor. Beneath that, we have a cellular modem, which allows us to maintain communication with our server and get the data in real time. And if for any reason communication is interrupted, there's also a backup data logger up here. There's also an air conditioner in the enclosure, which helps to cool the temperature. But apart from that, there's nothing else. There are no hazardous materials or calibration gases that we need to worry about.
So how do you envision us using this in the community? Where can people find the air quality data when it's up and running?
So we'll be using it as a part of our complaint response, as well as for special studies. If there's pollution tied to a specific source that we'd like to know more about, this would be a great tool for that. Additionally, we could use it for our community air protection. Once it's deployed, the data will be coming to us through the cell modem in real time for staff verification, and then we'll be uploading it onto our website right beside our normal data from our permanent monitoring stations.
For more information, visit ourair.org.
Well done. Thank you.
So
Any questions? Anything else, Mr. Kennedy?
That was a video that we put together for the public as well, but I figured we may as well debut it here. Yeah, so if there are no other questions, thank you for your time.
I
we
don't
do,
have so
yeah.
much of a. I don't so much have a question as just a comment that these presentations have been great.
Thank you.
That they've been great to see the work that the average employee at the APCD is engaged in at a kind of more detailed fashion. Pretty fascinating for us to be taking a look at.
Very good. Thank you. Then, Mr. Lavanito?
Thank you. Yeah, I think one of my things that I really trying to get us to do, which this thing was a huge step forward, is I don't think the average person out there realizes, first off, that there is an air pollution control district, that somebody's actually measuring and monitoring and doing all these things. I just get these weird comments like, well, no one cares, you know, that kind of stuff, where it's like, I like this because I think we have to tell this story better because we have a lot of really great successes in this county as it comes to air quality, but the message just doesn't get out there. So I think this is really good. And by the way, you might be the smartest employee we have. I'm not sure. Well, I only understood about 8% of what you were talking about, but it was. I'm glad you did it.
Thank you. Sorry, I get a little nervous.
No, that's cool.
I had a question.
Explain to me that one again. I can't remember.
You made reference a couple of times to the need for a power source, and
Yes.
we're dealing with PSPS, the Public Safety Power Shortage.
Public safety power shutoff, yeah.
Shut off, yeah. So how would we address that if you needed to deploy these instruments and the power? There was no power.
At the moment, I don't believe that we have a great solution for that because it seems kind of counterproductive to use a generator for an air monitoring device.
Yeah,
So,
we've been looking at what other air districts are doing, and our neighbors to the north in San Luis Obispo County, they actually have a solar array for one of their portable monitors that Joel's actually going to have an opportunity to talk more to their staff about, I believe, next week. As an option. We've talked about this as our continuity of operations. You know, if power is shut off, all of our monitoring stations will be down. So that's a challenge for us that we're trying to figure out. In conversations with other air districts, some air districts are installing a propane-based backup generator, or you have the solar option as well. Solar and batteries, probably obviously the most ideal solution, but with a large price tag.
You have your work cut out for you, right? We all do, dealing with these power shutoffs. So, but as Mr. Lavanino said, you got a lot of smart people, and thanks for solving that problem. Mr. Adam.
Yeah, the only thing I want to say about solar is if you're going to be moving them around an awful lot in a transporting environment, you want to watch out for the stuff that's inside when you break them, because I understand that's pretty nasty stuff.
Thank you for that. Any comments or questions from Santa Barbara? Good.
I had one,
Oh,
I'm sorry. You said
Mr.
there's only
Julian?
one of these units, these portable units behind you, and it's located, you have one for the,
so the district, the Santa Barbara County APCD owns this one device.
Right.
But we have access to several more that are owned by the California Air Resources Board that we're hosting as loaners for neighboring air districts as well. So if there are any wildfires, we already have them here, and we're able to have a faster
now,
response.
there's a new superintendent in Guadalupe, and we were talking about, there's 2 schools in Guadalupe, and he was asking to see if, he came from the Carpinteria area, so he was familiar with these monitoring units, and he was wondering if there's something available that they could put at one of the schools, and you have one in you had one in Santa Maria. I don't know if it's still,
We do.
it's still there, or is it?
Yeah, that's CARB's station that
Right.
we're actually in the process of taking over.
Okay.
It's going to be relocated to a different area. The rent currently for the location where it's at is much more than we have in our budget or we pay for any of our sites. So we're in the
Okay.
process of relocating that or finding a location for that now. But as far as particulate matter, we're in non-attainment for the state PM standard, and we will be doing more assessment countywide to get a better understanding of where we're at outside of our existing network. A while back, we invested in the low-cost sensors, the purple air monitors, and we've deployed those at a few schools throughout the area. We've also co-located those with our federal reference methods at our permanent stations, and unfortunately, they aren't performing to the level that we're comfortable with. So we're evaluating other low-cost sensors to see if there's different strategies or different devices that actually perform better. But Guadalupe is on our list of a place to come and visit and get a better understanding of PM in your
Good,
community.
appreciate it.
Thank you, Mayor. Any other questions? Was
Alrighty.
that the end of the
Yeah, thank
presentation? Oh, great. Thank you. Very informative and fun, even. And Ms. Arlen, Janae, anything else to add as you close that item?
No, I want to thank all of you for being here to see what we do and how we do it. I think it's pretty exciting, and it gave two staff an opportunity to present that have never presented to you before. So thank you for your time and all your great questions.
Thanks. We'll close that item, and the announcement that we have is that our next, oh no, okay, so this will be broadcast on county TV, October 20th at 5 p.m. And then we'll be adjourning to our meeting in December. There's none in November.
Correct.
Is that right? Okay. And that's December 19th here in Santa Maria. Didn't SBCAG say that we were going to be in Santa Barbara in December? Well, that's not your problem.
Well, we typically meet where they're meeting.
Oh, we're meeting in November, the other group. Okay. So enough said. Thank you. Meeting adjourned.